Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2003 fantasy epic, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to River for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal. The link will be in the video description down below, and I'll try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. Now, this is the climactic entry in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I think for the most part, it is truly an epic conclusion to this series of adaptations of Tolkien's novels. I honestly don't have a lot of problems with this one. The problems that I have with it are just due to things that were left out that were in the extended cut that I think should have been put back into the movie, or certain concepts and certain ideas that weren't completely fully realized. But for the most part, when it comes to what is there, when it comes to what ultimately wound up in theaters, it's tremendous. It's a really great, grand finale. And I really don't have a lot of problems with the fact that it swept the Oscars when it came out, because it's one of those movies that really was such a just tremendous and terrific spectacle in numerous different ways. I would say when I saw this in a theater in 2003, it was definitely one of the most amazing, unbelievable, just insane experiences that I remember having when it comes to watching anything in the cinema. So the film will definitely have a special place in my heart for that reason alone. And after revisiting it, it still holds up really well, despite the fact that it is a little bit too long in the tooth and there are some things that could be improved upon. But for the most part, it's still a pretty enjoyable epic. It's directed by Peter Jackson, and I feel that his direction in this is every bit as technically sound and impressive as anything that he did in the other films in the series, if not even more so, because of the fact that this is the culmination of a long cinematic journey for Peter Jackson and everyone else involved with the production. This could have broke a lesser filmmaker. This grueling shoot could have really reared its ugly head with this film in particular if you had a filmmaker who wasn't cut out for it, like Peter Jackson. And I think a big reason why you never see a dip in quality when it comes to the direction or when it comes to just the film itself on numerous different technical levels is because of the fact that Peter Jackson still maintained the same passion, still maintained the same skill and drive, even when it comes to this unbelievably difficult shoot. I mean, this is the kind of film series, when it comes to the way that it was shot, that you will never see again, because of the extended amount of time that was put into it, because of the fact that all the actors and the crew and the directors and everyone else involved, they shot everything back to back. This wasn't just a Back to the Future Part 2 and 3 or Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions kind of thing where you shot two films back to back. That alone in itself is already a daunting task. This was three films and three, like, 3 hour long epics that were shot simultaneously, or at least back to back, one after another. And that is just unbelievably insane. And it is crazy to me that these films turned out as well as they did considering the circumstances. And you really gotta honestly give major kudos and a shout out to Peter Jackson for being the one that just kept everything together for so long. And his direction from a technical standpoint is every bit as strong and technically sound as it was in Fellowship and the Two Towers. The battle sequences are still showcased and set up in ways that are just thrilling and just absolutely impressive. And I know I've said that like numerous times, but I think that's really the best way to sum it up. I mean, there's just a lot of astounding moments of spectacle in this movie. And Jackson just shot them in ways to provide the maximum result. And the moments of emotion are also shot in ways that are very effective and very strong in their own right. The film isn't boring when it comes to the usage of the camera or the different types of techniques or the way the camera moves or the different types of shots and pans and zooms and different kinds of angles. Like everything is all flowing and has a lot of creativity when it comes to the way shots are presented in the film. It does have a lot more visual effects, but in comparison to the Two Towers, I felt Jackson and his crew found a little bit better way to balance things to the point where for CGI from 2003 or earlier, this still looks great even after all these years. And honestly, that's a testament to the work ethic of everybody involved and also just how talented of a filmmaker Peter Jackson is, because he and his guys at Weta were close and they worked together and they found a way to incorporate these state-of-the-art digital effects into the film in a much more seamless fashion in comparison to some of the experimenting that they were doing in the Two Towers. And yeah, I can't sing enough praises for Peter Jackson when it comes to his direction in this film. It's definitely some of his best work, and I 100% agree with the Academy when it comes to him winning Best Director. Now, the screenplay by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, and Peter Jackson. This is a script that has so many high points. This is a screenplay that, for the most part, I think is stupendous and really solid, but there are some things that I think could have been taken out or rearranged or put back in that I do feel would make the film even more epic and even more satisfying of a conclusion. And one of those things is improving the film's pacing. The movie is 3 hours and 20 something minutes, or just 3 hours and 20 minutes. That's the theatrical cut. The extended version is over 4 hours. And I feel there are things that are put in here that work. Like I think having Shalab here, the spider, in The Return of the King instead of the Two Towers, I think that was a good narrative choice in terms of changing things around. I think it was also really inspired when it comes to the screenwriters taking elements involving Sam and Frodo and their journey to Mount Doom from the Two Towers and placing them in Return of the King. I feel that honestly improves upon Return of the King, and that it really makes it in a lot of ways for me like a more effective conclusion to this story or this series of novels by not having that stuff happen in the Two Towers with the orc and all that stuff involving Frodo being kidnapped by the orcs and Sam rescuing him, and you have all that in Return of the King. It just makes more sense to have that there as a placeholder for these events than it is to have those events happen earlier within the long narrative of the trilogy. And so there's a lot of things that were added to this that were changed around that I really liked, that I thought were great. There's other things that are maintained from the novels, like Eowyn and stuff like that, and the sequence involving the Witch King with Eowyn and Mary. And I love the way that that scene is executed. I love the stuff with Aragorn reclaiming his throne and leading his men to battle and delivering one of the most inspiring speeches you will ever hear in any movie. And there's just a lot to like about this script. And I feel that it's the most consistently tense film in the trilogy because of the way that the script is structured. There always feels like there is something going on in terms of the plot with the multiple different subplots with Frodo and Sam and Gollum and the stuff with Aragorn and the rest of the Fellowship and King Theoden and his men, the men of Rohan, and you always had this impending sense of doom with the army that's going to be heading towards Minas Tirith, and it really is an effective script in terms of just having consistent drama and consistent tension. It really does help the film move along at a relatively quicker pace, despite the fact that it does have some pacing issues in the first 45 minutes, just like the Two Towers. But once it really starts to pick up, once it starts laying the groundwork for the climactic finale, I think it's really good stuff. I mean, even the stuff involving the Ghost Army and what's going on with them, the Army of the Dead, and the mysteriousness involving the mountains of the dead, and anyone who goes in there never comes back. And you've got Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli who go in there, and Aragorn has to convince the Army of the Dead to join him. And there's that whole like, will he be able to convince them or will he not? And there is some genuine moments of, questioning and mystery when it comes to like, well, maybe he might not be able to do it. Maybe they won't listen to him. And there's a certain sense of urgency as well because time is running out. Sauron has established and has his army, and they're marching towards Minas Tirith, and they're Sauron's also getting stronger and stronger, and Sam and Frodo have to succeed in their mission, otherwise Middle Earth is doomed. And Aragorn and the rest of his men have to succeed in theirs because they don't have enough soldiers to be able to fight Sauron's army, so they have to get the Army of the Dead to agree to help them. And so yeah, it does. It has a much more consistent, engaging sort of thing that's going on involving the script, where just a lot of things are just consistently building and then building on top of another until you get to the finale. And that's why I feel that a lot of that should have started a little bit earlier. There's no reason to have Smeagol's origin in the opening of the movie. I know a lot of people like it. I never really was a huge fan of it, even when I saw this film in the theater when I was a kid. It really isn't necessary. It makes it feel like this is Smeagol's movie. And this isn't Smeagol's movie. This isn't Gollum's film. And it just kind of comes out of left field. And there's a reason why it was more of a thing that was in the Two Towers when it comes to the storytelling. And I just think it's kind of a jarring way to open the movie, considering the way that the Two Towers ended. So I would have cut that out entirely. It's not needed. There's some good practical makeup effects when it comes to Smeagol's transformation, but I'm fine with losing that in favor of just keeping all of that in your imagination. Because there was enough there when it comes to the quality of the writing that you understood that something happened to him. You understood that he was once closer to something that was more human. You knew that, or more of a hobbit. Like you knew that was something that was the case just by the way that the character talked about his past and the way that things were set up. You didn't need to see it. You didn't need to see the origin of Gollum. It wasn't necessary to me. That alone would help the pacing of the first 45, 50 minutes or so, because then you just jump right into Sam and Frodo and their journey to Mount Doom, picking up where the last film left off, and then you follow up with the Fellowship and Aragorn and everyone else. It just isn't a needed thing. And there's a few other things that I think you could have trimmed a little bit during the first 45 to 50 minutes to kind of quicken up the pace a little bit. Because all the elements are there to have a consistently engaging uh, film. And for the most part, it really is the most consistently engaging script compared to uh, the Two Towers. I mean, I would say it's arguably even more consistently engaging than Fellowship because of just the constant impending sense of potential doom that's surrounding everything, where the stakes are just so much higher and time is running out. And speaking of time, I think that some elements of the script were cut for time reasons. And I think that was a mistake. Cut other more extraneous elements and parts of the script, like maybe some more of the stuff with Denethor, and put back in the sequence with Saruman and Saruman's death. Not having that in there, I do feel was a mistake, and I agree with Christopher Lee on that, because it's one of those things where it's like Saruman was such a big part of like the Two Towers and even elements of the first film, and you never see what happens to him. That is unacceptable to me. So that should have been put back into the theatrical cut of the film. Another thing that I feel should have been put into the theatrical cut that is also part of the extended cut, because the Saruman death scene was actually shot and is in the extended version of the movie. So another sequence like that is when Gandalf confronts the Witch King, because that would really further establish the Witch King as more of a threat than what you had been seeing earlier, because he destroys Gandalf's staff. You without that, you don't know why Gandalf doesn't have his staff anymore. And the Witch King, when it comes to the battle of I think it was during the battle of Minas Tirith, when that happens and there's all this going on, and the Witch King shows up and is fighting and is on his dragon and confronts Eowyn. When he gets defeated, it doesn't really feel as much of a big deal. It feels like they just defeat another ring wraith. And I think having that sequence with Gandalf and the Witch King would really help that character stand out more. Another scene I put back in there is the Mouth of Sauron. When it comes to that scene, where the Mouth of Sauron is this orc that has like a really messed up lower half of his face and these bloody teeth, honestly reminds me of the possessed version of Sam Neill's character in Event Horizon with all the cuts on his face. And he's speaking through Sauron is speaking through the mouth of Sauron, and he's talking to Aragorn and Gandalf, and is basically telling them all that they're doomed and there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to lose. And Aragorn beheads the mouth of Sauron. I'd keep that in the film because that's a good scene. It further once again establishes Sauron as as a more memorable presence, other than this big just glowing eye, and there's some good acting there in that scene as well by Ian McKellen and Viggo Mortensen. And another little scene I would include is the death of I think it's Gothmog, who was one of he was the general of the orcs, the one with the bubbly face. He just runs away in the theatrical version. In the extended cut, there's a sequence where Gimli and Aragorn defeat him and kill him. I would keep that in there because why build this guy up only for him to run away like a like a bitch. It just felt like it was not even necessary to try to build the guy up. And one other thing, actually two other things. I would remove the ending with Sam and the marriage scene. We don't need it. It's not necessary. There are too many endings as it is when it comes to this film. So cut that out. The last ending would be the stuff with the ships and the elves and Frodo saying goodbye. And I would add a couple things. I would add the epilogue that was planned with Galadriel doing a narration of what happened uh, with Gimli and Legolas and the rest of the Fellowship after the events of the Battle of Minas Tirith and the battle at Sauron's gates. I would include that because as it is, it's really left a mystery. What happened to the rest of the Fellowship? You get to know what happens to Sam and with Frodo all these years later, and you get to know the Gandalf and Frodo and the rest of what's his name? Oh God, I can't believe I forgot his name. Sorry, I'm not the best with names. There's just so many different characters in this series too. Elrond. So yeah, Elrond and Galadriel, they all go on the boat. And that's fine. I would keep that for sure. But like, yeah, the other stuff is just it just feels kind of extraneous and like what happens to those other characters, but you don't know what happens with Legolas and Gimli afterwards, and they were integral parts of the Fellowship as well. And only other thing I would add in is something that they were considering to do and even shot some scenes for, but ultimately decided not to do it. And that's having Aragorn actually fight a physical embodiment of Sauron in the film's climax. I know some people don't like that because they like the mysterious nature of the eye. I think the eye got old after the Two Towers, and you really needed something to beef up the climax than just the eye and the tower collapsing. So that's why I would have Sauron in physical form and like a 2 to 3 minute battle back and forth fight between Aragorn and Sauron, which is juxtaposed and edited together with the stuff involving Sam, Frodo, and Gollum at Mount Doom. And the whole plan was to have it be one of those things where Sauron would appear to have won because Aragorn would have stabbed him with a sword, and then Sauron would be unfazed by it and was ready to deliver a killing blow. But that's when the ring falls into the lava and gets destroyed, and that's when Sauron's physical form explodes or dissipates, and then the tower falls. And I would just combine the two together. You that way, it just feels like there's more of a satisfying conclusion to everything that's been building up to this point. Just a tower falling is not really as satisfying to me for everything that has been leading up to this moment. Also, it gives Aragorn a chance to really solidify his redemption arc because it was his father that defeated Sauron the first time, but he succumbed to the evil of Sauron. So this time around, he doesn't succumb to the evil. He doesn't succumb to the temptation. He's an integral part of things. Him returning as the king and leading Theoden's men into battle and distracting Sauron so Sam and Frodo can actually go to Mount Doom is one of the main reasons why the ring is even destroyed in the first place and Sauron is even defeated. So this would just further solidify that arc for Aragorn And it would make more sense that he would fight some kind of physical form of Sauron than a random cave troll. Like, if you think about it, it really would. And I know there's people who've said, like, oh, it doesn't make much sense because it's not in the book. Well, the book does mention that Sauron does have a physical form. And there's lines of dialogue where Gandalf is talking about how he's not strong enough yet to take his physical form. But it's insinuated that eventually he will be. And it makes more sense that he would show up in a physical form during this battle because why not? Tip the scales in his favor. He already has this army, and they're already outnumbering the men of Rohan and Aragorn's forces. So why not show up and tip the scales in your favor? It makes no sense strategically that he would just remain as a watching eye in a tower and not actually show up in his physical form when he could to tip the scales. So I think it was a good idea. And I think Peter Jackson and everyone involved with the film that wanted to do that should have stuck to their guns and actually shot that scene and kept it in the film. But that's just me. Um, but there are other things that are just fine the way they are. There's so many things that are fine just the way they are in the film script. I think the stuff involving Gollum and him being the one that gets the ring and then falls into the lava, I actually think that was a good choice. I love the stuff with Sam and how, in a lot of ways, he was the hero. Because of the fact that without Sam, Frodo just remains captured in the tower, and the orcs probably kill him, and Sauron gets the ring, and everyone is screwed. But Sam, he did the right thing. He took the ring, and he never gave up on Frodo, and he went to the tower, and he saved his friend. And then when Frodo and Sam are going up, and they're climbing Mount Doom, Frodo is spent, and he's collapsed, and he can't go any further. And Sam is the one that carries him up the cliffs and gets him there, so to the bridge and all of that. And that's huge. Sam was such a big part of this entire trilogy, and it was really nice to see his heroism and his character really get a chance to shine in this script. And there are like a few other sort of things too that I definitely want, like Shelob. I really like the stuff with the spider. That is some of the most creepy and just genuinely suspenseful moments in the entire trilogy. And yeah, overall, really good script. I even like the stuff with Merry and Pippin. I like the fact that Merry gets a legitimately important arc of his own. I like the scenes with him and Eowyn, and I think the both of them, they come across better here and more in place than they did in the Two Towers, where they do their comic relief stuff when they're like at the pub and drinking and doing all this stuff, or when they are there with the Ents and they're eating salted pork. But then there are moments where they are able to show other sides of them with the stuff with Pippin and the scenes with Denethor, which, by the way, I said you can cut out the stuff with Denethor. You don't have to cut out all of it. I like the stuff with Pippin and Denethor, especially the scene where Pippin sings. Um, but I don't really feel you necessarily needed as much of the Denethor stuff or much of the stuff with Faramir. I think that's what his name is. It Faramir? Yeah, I think that's who it is. Honestly, I would have liked to have beefed up another character's role a little bit more. Like Eomer, like Karl Urban's character. I don't know if that's how it was in the books, but if that's the case, beef up his character a little bit more in this film. Instead of having this of Denethor and his son and all that, like, give me a little bit more backstory and a little bit more about Eomer. Like I would like to see more about this guy. I'd like to see more scenes with him. He just felt like a total and complete afterthought in this film. And honestly, this entire trilogy, even though he's Eowyn's brother, you know, that's all you really know is he's Eowyn's brother, and he's a part of the army, and he's a soldier. But that's it. You don't know much else other than that. But yeah, for the most part, despite the things that I mentioned, it's a really good script. The film also features a great and just really top-notch cast. I mean, it's basically made up of all the same people from the previous two films in the series. I don't even think there really is any newcomers here other than Denethor, played by John Noble, but and maybe a couple others, but not much. Pretty much the same cast, and they all are equally as great here as they were in the other films, which is impressive considering the grueling shoot. You could really see how some of them could have gotten a little bit tired and maybe wouldn't have put as much into their performance, but that's not what happened here with Elijah Wood as Frodo, and Ian McKellen as Gandalf, and Viggo Mortensen, who I believe he won an Oscar for his performance as Aragorn, and I totally understand why. Sean Astin as Samwise, one of his best acting roles, to be honest, is in this film. The performance by Andy Serkis as Smeagol and Gollum, Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan as Pippin and Merry. I feel that both of them, like I mentioned when I was talking about the script, they are given more balance with the script, but both of them also deliver better performances than what they did in the Two Towers. I don't know what happened there, but uh, here it's closer to what they brought to the table in Fellowship. John Rhys-Davies, once again, a lot of fun as Gimli. Orlando Bloom is a total badass as Legolas. Bernard Hill, uh, really like his Theoden. I loved his Theoden performance in Return of the King. He's great here, and he's also great in the Two Towers, and some of his best work, and definitely some of his best performance work when it comes to this actor. And Miranda Otto as Eowyn is a great example of a performance and a character that is a female in a relatively male dominated series of films that still holds her own in a way that doesn't feel preachy. It doesn't feel like it's shoved down your throat. It feels very natural. And you legitimately do buy her in battle. You buy that she could stand up to the Witch King and deliver a killing blow. And in large part, that's due to what Miranda Otto brings to the role. David Wenham is Faramir, once again, just kind of there. Same thing for Karl Urban. It's not their fault. They weren't really given as much to do in terms of big grand moments on screen, or a ton of sequences to really show their charisma or anything of that sort. Hugo Weaving and Liv Tyler are back as Elrond and Arwen. So is Cate Blanchett as Galadriel. All three of them hold their own, do a good job when it comes to their performances. Consistent. They're consistently at the same level in this film compared to any of the others in the trilogy. Uh, John Noble did a good job playing an unlikable steward of Gondor. You know, the corrupt steward of Gondor who is a total pig. Ian Holm as Bilbo. It was fun to see him again. Another good performance. Sean Bean, I guess he's there in a flashback, which I don't even know if should even count that. Lawrence Macaray as the Witch King of Angmar. I want to give him credit. He also plays Gothmog. He did a great job playing both roles. Very intimidating. Had a good presence to him, despite barely having any lines of dialogue. And, in the extended version, you had, Christopher Lee was back as Saruman. who once again did a great job playing the slimy, evil character. Brad Dourif got a chance to redeem himself when it comes to his character Grima, who turned on Saruman and stabbed him in the back. And want to also mention Bruce Spence as the mouth of Sauron, because a lot of the performance when it comes to that scene is just Bruce Spence just emoting with his lower half of his face under all of his makeup and this helmet on top of his head, and that's not an easy thing to do. So I want to give him a lot of credit for that. But yeah, great cast, gorgeous cinematography by Andrew Lesnie. The editing by Jamie Selkirk was excellent. It was definitely something that was exemplary. The music by Howard Shore, once again, it's just stupendous. It's spectacular. Really fits the film well, fits the size and scope of it, captures all the needed emotion, and adds even more layers to that and to those sequences. And when it comes to the battle scenes and just anything involving any sort of moment of tension or suspense, all of it's just elevated when it comes to the quality because of Howard Shore's just really stellar score. And yeah, the film was long, 201 minutes, over 3 hours, but other than some pitfalls early on, I thought it was paced pretty well, considering the length of the movie. I wasn't really bored with the film for the majority of it, which is a testament to the writing and just the overall quality of the movie, because of the fact that it's so long and it didn't lose my interest. I didn't really become that disengaged with it for the most part. But yeah, I really don't have a whole lot else to say about it except, do I feel it's a 9 out of 10? Close. Do I feel it's like a 5-star film? Close. Um, do I feel it's one of the best of its genre? Absolutely. 100%. I also feel it's definitely one of the best films of 2003. And it's just one of those movies, though, where despite how much I like it, I honestly could have liked it even more. And I think it could have been even better if it just tweaked a few things, just added some stuff, took some stuff out, and then I feel it really would have been something that was like transcendent when it comes to cinema or even its own genre. But as it is, it's still way up there in terms of its quality compared to the other films in the series, or other films in general. But I will admit, I still honestly prefer and like Fellowship a little bit more, because there's just something about it that it just appeals to me a little bit more consistently than Return of the King. But I don't have any problems with anyone who thinks that this is the best one in the trilogy. I get it. I do feel that it does have some of the best moments in the entire trilogy, some of the most memorable moments in the trilogy, that's for sure. Uh, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Return of the King. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.